Hey guys! Tonight we slip quietly, back in time, to the cold, wind-chapped world of the Vikings. But we're not sailing with the warriors, no longships, no swords. Tonight, you're something else entirely. You are the Viking chef. Or more precisely, the poor soul responsible for feeding 40 angry, wet Norsemen with whatever scraps, bones, and dried-up roots they dragged in from the forest. The fire crackles. The smoke stings. And the smell, oh well, it's going to stay in your hair for the rest of your life. You're about to learn why you probably wouldn't survive a single day in this kitchen. Not because of battle wounds, but because your soup smells like eel and regret. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me, where in the world are you listening from? What's the time on your clock as you drift into this slow little nightmare? Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The morning is grey. Not the soft, pretty kind of grey, but the kind that settles over the fjord like old wool. Wet, heavy, and filled with the scent of rotting herring. You step barefoot across the cold planks. And a sharp splinter, yes, already, bites your heel. No time to fix it. You've overslept, and the stew pot is cold. Again. Outside. A wind blows through the longhouse slats, curling around the stone hearth like a bored ghost. It's not even sunrise, but someone's already shouting your name. Your name isn't important. What matters is the cauldron. The great, greasy, soot-stained thing that hangs over the fire like an iron stomach. It hasn't been scrubbed in. Well, historians still argue whether Viking cooks actually cleaned their pots at all, or if they just let each meal season the next. Today's stew will be fish. Again. Because that's what there is. You grab a clay bowl of yesterday's leftovers, cold, gelatinous, lumpy with something that might once have been turnip. And you dump it in without ceremony. It lands with a wet thud. Like a frog hitting a rock. The fish is in a pile by the door. Still whole. Still staring. Still stiff with frost. You peel one from the stack. A pale grey thing with gaping jaws. And it makes a snapping noise, like breaking kindling. You hate this part. Not because it's hard, but because every fish stinks just a little bit worse than the one before it. You scale it with a jagged rock. Your fingers go numb from the cold. And you think, briefly, about the warm beds they must have in southern lands. Places where figs grow, and food comes with spices. Instead of dried algae and questions. A Viking warrior stomps in. Dripping wet, fuming about his wet cloak. He eyes the pot. Grunts. You nod. He spits in the fire and leaves. It's a kind of compliment. Maybe. Outside, someone is slaughtering a sheep. You can hear the bleating. The wet slaps. The laughter. You keep stirring. The smoke from the hearth burns your eyes. There's no chimney. Just a hole in the roof where cold daylight slithers in like a lazy snake. By now, the fish is breaking down. Meat pulling from the bone. Fat rising to the surface in little pools like islands in a grey ocean. You add dried seaweed. A handful of rye flour. And what might be the last onion in the settlement. It's soft and weeping, like you almost did last night. When the porridge pot cracked for no reason at all. Your tunic smells like old soup and pine smoke. Your fingers are slick with fish oil. And in your hair. What's that? No, really, what is that? You pluck it out and flick it into the fire. You decide not to think about it. There's a long silence. Broken only by the occasional snap of the fire. And the soft, gurgling burps from the cauldron. You ladle some stew into a wooden bowl. Test the taste. It's edible. It could use salt, Of course. There's no salt. The salt barrel ran dry last week. You heard the Jarl muttering about trading for more. But until then, your stew tastes like sadness and sea. A boy enters. He can't be more than 12. He has a bruise on his cheek and a wooden spoon in his belt. You remember when that was you? Fresh. Hopeful. Foolish enough to believe you'd be serving roasted duck. Or honey-glazed venison. No. You're cooking fish stew. In a smoky hut. While your socks, made of damp goat wool, slowly turn to stone. The boy asks for breakfast. You give him a bowl. And watch as he sips it like it's punishment. It is. Still, he nods. Warm, he says. That's high praise. You almost smile. Almost. You reach for another fish. And the smell hits you again. Salty, sour. A little metallic. You think about what the Romans might have cooked. Historians still argue whether Viking cuisine was influenced by trade routes. But there's no garum here. Only regret. As the boy leaves, you hear a crunch underfoot. You look down. Another fish eye. Another splinter. You sit. Just for a moment. Back aching. Hands raw. The pot bubbles. You stir slowly. The fish breaks down. And so do you. Just a little. Outside. The wind howls like it's laughing at you. And honestly, maybe it is. There's a quiet dread in the air. Not the sharp kind that screams of danger. But the slower, heavier kind. That settles like cold fog across your chest. You forgot the salt. You always forget the salt. And now, your memory drifts to that particular morning, when the pickled herring turned blue around the edges, and you hoped no one would notice. If you scraped off the worst bits, and stirred it in with cabbage and thyme, they noticed, but they didn't say anything. At first, it's the absence of complaint that scares you most. The way the warriors just chewed in silence. Eyes narrowing. Tongue stiff from the sting of rot and vinegar gone wrong. No one spoke for 2 whole days. That silence followed you. It curled into your blankets. And nested somewhere behind your eyes. Like a splinter of guilt. You tried, of course. You always do. But the salt barrel had been licked clean. The last flake scraped into a stew the week before. When a feast had to be made for a visiting chieftain, who didn't even finish his bowl. There's a reason Viking chefs relied on salt. Without it, your winter stores start to sweat. The fish turns. The pork oozes. And even the onions begin to hum. You sniffed at the barrels. Those old wooden casks sealed with beeswax and hope. And you knew. They were going. One by one. The sauerkraut you'd buried months ago. Well, it smells like feet now. And not warm feet. The cold, wool-wrapped kind. Left too long in a damp boot. You tried to save it. You poured in sour whey. You added dried herbs. You even whispered to the gods of preservation. Though no one talks about them anymore. Historians still argue whether Viking fermentation was more science or superstition. You're starting to think it was mostly desperation. Because here you are, watching a barrel of spoiled barley swell like a drowned man's belly. And you still have to serve it. With a smile. For Jay. She doesn't enter. She never does. The kitchen is beneath her. But her voice slides through the smoke like a knife through buttered oatcakes. Is it ready? She asks. You want to say, is what ready? Because nothing is. But instead, you nod. And stir. And pray the mushrooms weren't the poisonous kind this time. They probably weren't. Probably. You remember the last batch. You sliced them fine. Added dill and vinegar. Served it with rye bread. Half the village developed an odd buzzing in their ears. They blamed the mead. You didn't correct them. She walks off. Her silk hem trails in the mud. You glance back at the shelves. The pickles have clouded over. The vinegar you made from crushed apples has taken on a new smell. One you don't trust. But the worst part is knowing the winter has barely begun. The sun dips early now. The ice creeps under the door. And your stores are shrinking. While the mouths you must feed only grow louder. There was a time you believed in rations. Measured portions. Math, even. But Viking hunger doesn't work like that. They come back from raids. With blood on their boots. And wolves on their breath. And they want meat. Now. And salt. Well, salt is the one thing that could have hidden the truth. The truth that your cabbage is sour in the wrong way. That your dried fish smells slightly floral, but not in a good way. That the stew you made last night was mostly bone broth and wishful thinking. A boy bursts in. Not the same boy from earlier, this one is smaller. He carries a horn of goat milk. It's already curdled. He sets it down. Winks. And disappears. You stare at it. You sniff. You taste. It tastes like betrayal. But you ladle some into a jug anyway. Dilute it with water. And warm it near the fire. Maybe, just maybe, it'll pass for cream. You reach for the herb bundle. It's dry, brittle. The thyme crumbles in your fingers like oil. You crush it between your palms. Inhale deeply. It helps. A little. You sprinkle it into the stew. Watch the flecks swirl and vanish. It doesn't fix the lack of salt. But it distracts the tongue. Sometimes. That's enough. You sit back on your heels. The floor creaks. And in the shadows behind the stew pot, you see the glint of rat eyes. Just watching. You throw a rock. It misses. They scurry. But not far. They always come back. Like the hunger. Like the cold. Like the gnawing fear. That this batch, this strange, bubbling, saltless batch, might be your last. Because when the food goes bad, they don't blame the gods. They blame the cook. And your name, your forgetful, saltless name, has been whispered a lot lately. Outside, the frost thickens. The trees groan. The fire spits. And you stir. And stir. And stir. You wake. Not because you're rested, but because someone is shouting your name again. A low, grumbling bark from across the longhouse yard. Your back aches. Your neck crooked from sleeping on a bundle of damp moss. And your hands still smell faintly of fermented barley. And smoked sheep tongue. You rise slowly. The cold hits you like a forgotten debt. One you owe the earth. For daring to lie still. The ground outside is glazed with ice. That thin, treacherous sheen that looks harmless. Until you try to walk on it. While balancing a full bucket of spoiled grain mash. Which, of course, is exactly what you're doing now. You brace your shoulders. Adjust your footing. And begin your careful trek. Across the frozen planks. From the smokehouse to the hearth. But it's no use. Your heel skids. The bucket swings. And you go down. Hard. Barley splatters everywhere. Across your tunic. Into your beard. And yes, across the entrance to the chieftain's outhouse. You lie there a moment. Flat on your back. Blinking up at the sky. as the wind whistles through your earlobes, like it's trying to hum you a lullaby, made entirely of mockery. A chicken walks by, clucks, pecks at the spilled mash, and leaves. You don't move. You think about staying here, freezing into a quiet statue of defeat, like some forgotten kitchen god. No one offers prayers to anymore. But then you hear it, the unmistakable grumble of approaching boots, heavy ones, warrior boots. You scramble upright, still covered in grain, and just in time to meet the gaze of 3 men carrying a dead boar on a wooden sled. They drop it in front of you. It lands with a wet slap, sending up a small cloud of frost and hair. "Cook it," one of them says, like that's the simplest task in the world. And then they walk away. You stare at the boar. Its tusks are cracked. Its tongue is out. Its body, massive, frozen solid, and probably filled with everything you don't want to think about. You reach for your flint blade, still dull from yesterday's root chopping. You try to slice the belly open. It resists. You dig in harder. The blade slips. Your knuckles meet the ice. Blood rises, slow and reluctant, like sap in a winter tree. You sigh, wrap a bit of linen around your hand, and keep going. The boar's stomach finally gives. And what spills out? Well, historians still argue whether Vikings ate everything inside an animal, or just most of it. But judging by the smell, this one may have started fermenting from the inside out. You fight your gag reflex. You win. Barely. The lungs go into one bowl, the heart into another, the intestines, long and coiled like ancient rope. You rinse them in the stream with your good hand, ignoring how the cold water feels like knives and needles, wrapped in glass. Your breath fogs the air. Your boots squelch. And somewhere nearby, a goat is screaming. You look up. You see it. It's chewing something white. Flour. The last sack of it. You break into a run. Well, more of a limping, flailing stumble. But the goat sees you, and it bolts. You chase it around the yard, over firewood stacks, past the old carved totem with the crooked face, and through a puddle of mysterious stew drippings. Finally, you corner it near the fence. You grab its horns. It sneezes in your face. You recover the sack, mostly intact. A little damp. A little chewed. You shake out the flour, brush off the goat hair, and carry it back to the kitchen, where you now have to prepare bread, on a table still slick from butchering boar entrails. Your hands are red. Your shoulders hurt. And you've got about an hour before 20 men return, demanding hot food, fresh mead, and probable. You don't sing. You can't sing. But if someone asks, you'll have to try. So you mix the dough. It's sticky, cold, and reluctant to rise. The fire isn't warm enough. You feed it with twigs, then with bark, then with a bit of your own hair. You find stuck to the apron. The dough puffs, just a little. You pat it gently. You murmur to it, as if kindness could coax yeast. It can't. But you try anyway. When the bread is finally baking, you turn back to the boar meat, chopped now, salted with tears, and roasting over a spit that squeaks every third turn. You check the sky. The sun is sinking again. Just a smear of orange across steel-grey clouds. They'll be back soon. You wipe your hands on a cloth. So stained. It's more brown than fabric. You taste the stew. It's better than yesterday. Which means, barely tolerable. You taste the bread. It's dense. Like a stone that went to school. You sit on a barrel of dried peas. Watch the fire flicker. And listen to the sounds of boots. Growing louder. Dinner is served. Whether they like it or not. There's a stillness. Just before the door creaks open. A long, drawn-out hush. Thick as barley syrup. And just as slow to pass through. Then, the unmistakable shuffle of 20 men. Half drunk. Half starved. And fully soaked with rain and blood and pride. They stomp into the longhouse. Boots clumping. Voices low. Armor creaking like tired wood. You're already ladling stew. Into the communal trough. Yes, a trough. Because when you're feeding warriors, bowls are an afterthought. One of them, tall, broad. Forearms like ox-cart wheels. Throw something at your feet. It's a leg. Still warm. Still bleeding. Boiled elk, he mutters. Grinning as if he's given you a gift. You look at it. For still clinging to the shin. Charred at the joint. Possibly still twitching. You ask, cautiously. What part is this from? He shrugs. Does it matter? And no. Of course it doesn't. Not to him. Not to any of them. To them, food is victory. It spoils. It's the thrill of dragging something dead through the woods. And slamming it on the table. With a proud belch. To you, it's panic. Because they expect you to make this mess into a meal. You lift the elk leg. Still sticky and stiff. You drop it into the hot cauldron. It doesn't sink right away. Just floats there. You stir. The broth clouds. The fat spreads. You pretend this is normal. And as you stir, they begin to sit. Long wooden benches. Smoothed by years of rowdy thighs. And spilled drinks. They begin banging mugs. Chanting. Laughing. Arguing over who threw the best axe. Or stole the finest goat. Someone's missing a tooth. Someone else has two that don't belong to him. They shout for food. You hurry. But not too fast. You've learned. Moving quickly only gets you yelled at sooner. Better to shuffle. Stoop. Spoon the soup carefully. Let the delay feel like patience. You serve the first trenchers. Thick slices of stale rye. Soaked in meat juice. Topped with hunks of whatever came off the bone first. Steam curls upward. The room fills with a smell that's not quite appetizing, but at least familiar. They eat. With hands. With knives. With the hunger of men who've just finished killing things. Bones clatter. Laughter rises. Then, someone gags. Your stomach drops. But he keeps chewing. They all do. One man pulls a long, wiry hair from his stew. Holds it up. Stares at you. You shrug. He snorts. Eats it anyway. Problem solved. You ladle more. And more. The elk leg finally sinks. You don't ask where the other half is. The room grows louder. Someone begins beating a rhythm on the table. A deep, pulsing thump. Like a heartbeat made of wood. They chant again. Old war songs. Half-drunk lullabies. A tale about a bear who stole a helmet. And never gave it back. You keep serving. Because that's what you do. You serve. Until someone gets the bright idea. To make it fun. They drag in the burnt elk ribs. still black with char. They hand them to you. Fix this, they say. As if fire and soot are ingredients to be undone. You scrape it. Gently, slowly. With the back of your knife. Ash falls like snow. You add honey from a cracked jug. Stir in a handful of chopped juniper. Something the healer said might hide the flavor of shame. You turn it over the flame. Let the sugars crisp. Let the smoke disguise what the fire already ruined. You plate it, if it can be called that, on a slab of wood. Sprinkle it with dried thyme. Slide it across the table. They devour it. One of them grins at you. Blackened teeth. Grease in his beard. Ice soft with mead. Not bad, he slurs. And it almost feels like praise. Almost. Then, someone else throws a bone. It lands in your pot. You freeze. Because now the broth is tainted. You don't know where that bone came from. It could be fresh. It could be old. It could be. But there's no time to think. More bones come. A game begins. Toss the bone into the cook's cauldron. Winner gets the first cut of tomorrow's meat. You step back. Let it happen. Because arguing would be worse. You stir again. Pretend you meant for this to happen. That you're crafting some kind of broth of champions. It bubbles like it agrees. One man sways toward you. Slaps your shoulder. Good stew, he says. You nod. He belches. Hard. Laughs. Then leans too far back and topples off the bench. No one helps him. You ladle more soup. Your apron is soaked. Your sleeves stiff with drippings. There's a bit of elk marrow on your shoe. That you'll forget about until next week. When it starts to smell. And still. They eat. And eat. And eat. Until the pot is scraped clean. The trenchers gnawed to pulp. And the bread. Even the burned parts. Torn apart by greedy hands. You collect the scraps. Wipe the table with your sleeve. Someone hands you a cracked mug of mead. You sip. It tastes of honey. Smoke. And something vaguely mossy. You don't ask. You never ask. The warriors begin to doze. Head slumped. Feet sprawled. A snore rattles the rafters. You sit. Finally. But not for long. Because the pot is empty. And tomorrow, they'll be hungry again. The pot is cold now. Its iron belly crusted with the last ring of fat. The final flecks of burnt thyme. And something else. Something sticky. You don't remember adding. You stare at it in the quiet. Alone with the slow drip of condensation. From the thatch above. Drip. Drip. Time moves differently after a feast. You think it's late. Or early. It doesn't matter. Your fingers trace the rim of the cauldron. Rough with soot. Blackened from 100 fires. The heat it once held is long gone. Just like your patience. You drag the pot to the stream. It takes both hands. It scrapes the ground. Grumbles like a sullen ox. You don't lift it. You drag it. The others sleep. Curled under bearskins. Snoring into the musty warmth of shared breath. But not you. You're heading into the dark. To clean. The stream is half frozen. Slushy along the edges. Rimmed with tiny crystals that shimmer like cursed snow. You tip the pot. It gurgles. Vomits out the sludge. And moans with relief. You squat beside it. Take your scrub rag. A wadded knot of old wool and sand. And begin to scrape. That's when you hear it. A soft, wet sneeze. You freeze. And then, a second one. You look up. Just across the stones, beside a low bundle of firewood, sits Hilda. Not a woman. Not a child. A pig. Well fed. One eye half closed. Steam puffing gently from her snout. She's the village mascot. Or maybe a warning. It's never clear. She goes where she pleases. And tonight, she's watching you clean. You nod. She blinks. The arrangement is understood. You return to scrubbing. But the pot won't clean. Because it's never really clean. Not when 20 men dip their knives into it. Not when children cough into it. Not when fire kisses it from below. And mice explore it from above. You do what you can. Rinse it once. Twice. A third time. For luck. Even though you stop believing in luck. You carry it back. Dripping. Dented. Sour smelling. And hang it back on the hook. Tomorrow's stew will begin in that very same pot. Just like always. Just like forever. You try to rest. You lie on a pile of kindling. Because your sleeping mat was claimed by someone with more important needs. You pull your apron over your chest. Wrap your arms around yourself. And drift. Only to be woken by the loudest, wettest cough you've ever heard. You jolt upright. The door flaps open. A boy, barefoot, shivering, clutches a wooden spoon to his chest. He's pale. His nose is running. His eyes are wide. The cauldron, he says. You blink. What about it? He points. It's moving. And sure enough, when you look, it is. Just slightly. Just enough. A soft wobble. A gentle sway. You step closer. The fire's out. No breeze. No rats. You reach out. Tap the pot. Something inside taps back. You freeze. Then remember. Everyone ate from it. Everyone. Even that man who said his stomach felt like it was being cursed by a dwarf. Historians still argue whether Viking cauldrons were believed to absorb spirits. Or just bacteria. You're starting to believe. Maybe both. But there's no time for fear. Breakfast must be made. You toss out the strange broth. Scrub again. Harder this time. You grab dried peas. Soak them. Carve onion with your dull flint. The layers slip. Resist. You slice your thumb. You don't even flinch anymore. You toss in dried fish. Even though it smells faintly like wet rope and disappointment. You stir. Slowly. Rhythmically. A soft swirl. Left and right. Like stirring time itself. You hum. Not a tune. Just a noise. A sleepy, low, nothing. It soothes you. You sit back. Wait. And from the shadows. A sneeze. You turn. Hilda again. She's in the doorway now. Watching. Waiting. You ladle a bit into a bowl. Set it down. She approaches. Sniffs. Because if the pig's willing to eat it, maybe the warriors will too. You wrap your apron tighter. The sky outside turns blue. The light creeps in like a lazy promise. And behind you, you hear the stirring of the sleepers. The longhouse groans. Boots scrape. Voices yawn. Another day. Another stew. Another meal you'll never taste. Because Viking chefs don't eat first. They wait. And wait. And wait. Morning has found you again. Not like a blessing. More like a weight dropped softly on your already aching shoulders. You are stirring. Again. This time, it's oat porridge. Thick, grey, reluctant porridge. That smells faintly of wet cloth. And the inside of a wooden boot. You've been at it for an hour. Slowly coaxing heat from yesterday's embers. Cradling the bowl with both hands. To stop it from tipping over like last time. When a careless lean turned breakfast into a floor stain. This time, you are careful. Steam rises. Slow as smoke from a lazy pipe. It curls upward, gathering under the thatch, before slinking toward the beams, and disappearing somewhere above the pig skulls. You glance around the longhouse. The others are starting to wake. One coughs. Another mutters. One simply groans. Like a log shifting under snow. They do not thank you. They do not speak to you. They smell the porridge. And drift toward it. Like hungry, half-sleeping moths. You ladle quietly. You do not meet their eyes. They sit. Eat. Swallow. Repeat. The sound of chewing. Thick, wet, rhythmic. Fills the space between words not spoken. And then, a warrior sneezes. Loud. Directly into the pot. You pause? Spoon still in hand. He wipes his nose on his arm. Shrugs. Keeps eating. No one reacts. Not even you. Because this is the 5th time this week. You stir the pot again. As if motion can erase memory. As if warmth can boil away germs. Historians still argue whether Vikings understood contagion. But you're beginning to suspect they just stared it down. By now, you've accepted that everyone eats from the same pot. The children. The warriors. The old man with the milky eye who drools when he chews. Even the healer, who insists her herbs kill the bad spirits, but still leaves leaf bits floating in every bowl. Sometimes you wonder if the pot remembers. Every stew. Every soup. Every lump of. The flavors never fully leave. They linger. Like ghosts. Like stains on your tunic. That no amount of snow scrubbing will ever lift. You glance at the shelf. There's still a bit of dried meat. A few onions. Some stale beer you might turn into soup, somehow. But nothing that feels like food. Not truly. Because this isn't cooking. It's survival. You finish serving. Someone drops a spoon. It rolls toward you. Splashes in the porridge. You pick it up. Wipe it on your sleeve. And hand it back. The man grunts something that could be thanks. Or indigestion. You sit on a stool. It wobbles. The floor is soft with old spills. Bits of grain stick to your soles. A chicken pecks near your boot. You ignore it. It's the same chicken from yesterday. You think its name is Egg. Or maybe that's just what you call it. In your head. It pecks again. You toss it a pea. It stares at you with cold, soulless poultry judgment. You apologize. Out loud. No one notices. The pot begins to boil again. You reduce the fire. Add more oats. A pinch of dried berry, if only for color. A child walks in. Tiny hands. Wide eyes. A smear of dirt across the cheek. You serve them a bowl. They sip. Make a face. You wait. Then, slowly, they nod. And that tiny nod, makes you feel like the finest cook in all the 9 realms. Even if your stew is mostly regret and oat dust. Even if your best knife is a dull flake of chipped flint, bound with twine. Even if your apron has more patches than fabric. Someone whispers your name. Not in anger. Not in complaint. Just softly. Asking for seconds. You nod. You ladle. You serve. And you wonder if the pot is the heart of the home. What does that make you? The blood? The lungs? Or just the smoke that rises and disappears again and again, with no one really seeing where it goes? You don't know. But you stir anyway. Because it's morning. Because the pot is W. The sun hangs low again. Not setting, not rising. Just resting like a tired coin on the edge of the sky. You're chopping onions now. Or something close to onions. They're smaller. Softer. And sprouting in places you wish they weren't. Your blade drags across the grainy log. You call a cutting board. It's warped. Slick with time. And smells like every stew you've ever made. Your hands are slow. Your fingers stiff. But you chop. And chop. And chop. Because dinner doesn't make itself. Though you often wonder what it might taste like if it did. Something crunches. Not the onion. Not your hands. You look down. A tooth. Floating in the soup. Not yours. Not even recent, maybe. It's old. Yellowed. Resting in the shallow pool of broth. Like a tiny shipwreck. You fish it out with a spoon. Set it aside. Decide not to tell anyone. It's not the first time. And it won't be the last. Because you stir with the same spoon. Used by warriors. Who chew with missing molars. And laugh while eating. As if joy is a spice you can sprinkle in. You think back. To last week. When the old man with the crooked smile bit into a barley cake. And spit something out. That looked suspiciously like bone. He just shrugged. Kept eating. That's the way of things here. If it floats, fish it out. If it sinks, chew carefully. You stir the pot again. This one's a seaweed stew. A coastal special. The seaweed was dried near the fire. Then soaked in a mix of broth and yesterday's mead. You're not proud of it. But it's warm. And it fills the bowl. You toss in dried cod flakes. They melt slowly, softening into something edible. If you close your eyes, you add mustard seed, a few crushed juniper berries, a pinch of powdered root. That might be horseradish, or might be just dirt. Historians still debate how refined Viking seasoning really was. You're pretty sure it depended on how desperate the day W. Outside, the sky is pale, colorless, almost blank. You hear the soft creak of boots on snow-packed earth. They're returning. The warriors. Voices low. Weapons dragging. One of them laughs like he's chewing rocks. You brace yourself. A door opens. A gust of cold slips in. Along with two men. One sack. And the overwhelming smell of salt and failure. They drop the sack. It twitches. You blink. It twitches again. And then you hear it. A whimper. You open the sack. A seal. Not quite dead. Not quite whole. You meet their eyes. They grin. You do not grin back. You take the sack. You take the seal. You do what must be done. You don't ask how it was caught. You don't ask if it was legal. You don't ask anything. Because Viking chefs don't ask. You skin the seal. Badly. Your hands are numb. The meat is dark. Slick. Smells like damp leather and seawater dreams. You cube it. Salt it. Sear it quickly over the half flame. It sizzles like betrayal. You add it to the stew. The seaweed shifts. The cod flakes yield. The tooth, still on the side, watches you like a warning. You serve the stew. One by one. They take their bowls. Sit on benches. Drink. No one speaks. It's a quiet meal. Too quiet. You sip from your own bowl. The only taste you'll get tonight. It's not good. But it's warm. And not poisoned. And that's enough. Then someone stands. He holds up his bowl. I found something, he says. You freeze. He tilts the bowl. Inside. The tooth. You stare. Your mind races. How? You took it out. You placed it aside. You're sure of it. A beat passes. Then. He laughs. It's lucky, he says. Old God send it for strength. He slams the bowl down. Finishes his stew. No one argues. You breathe again. They eat. They grunt. They mumble. And once again. The pot is scraped clean. You sit back on your heels. Legs numb. Eyes heavy. Hilda walks in. Yes, Hilda the pig. She noses around the pot. Snorts. Sneezes. Approves. You ladle a tiny scoop into a cracked bowl. Set it near her. She eats. You smile. Again. Because sometimes it's the little things. Like a pig's approval. Or a lucky tooth. Or stew that doesn't make anyone vomit. You lean against the wall. Your apron sticks to your tunic. Your boots are damp. Your soul is somewhere between simmer and scorch. Outside, the wind rises. Tomorrow will be colder. But tonight, the pot is empty. The bellies are full. The seal is gone. And you? You did your job. Even if no one saw. Even if no one thanks you. The pot remembers. And so do you. Night again. Though you barely notice the day. The hours slide together. Soft and shapeless. Like dough that never quite rises. You sit by the barrel. Knees drawn to your chest. Your back pressed against the logs. Stacked to keep the wind out. But the wind always finds a way in. It curls through the cracks. Tugs at your sleeves. Whispers across your neck. With icy breath that smells like brine and old wool. The hearth glows faintly. The fire's tired too. You're preparing something special tonight. At least, that's what they think. You know better. It's fermented skate. Shark, technically. Buried in the earth for weeks. Sealed in a barrel with birch leaves and a rock for weight. No one asked you to make it. It was a gift. Or maybe a dare. Or maybe both. You were told it was a delicacy. Only for feasts, they said. You open the lid. And immediately regret everything. The smell hits first. Like vinegar? Ammonia? And rotting seaweed braided into one long hot slap. You gag. You cover your nose with your sleeve. It doesn't help. Even Hilda, the pig who eats beetles and bark, backs away. You stare at the barrel. You stare at your hands. You are expected to serve this. You reach in. The meat is soft. Slick. Gelatinous. It slides under your fingers. Like it's trying to escape. You slice it into thick, uneven chunks. Your knife doesn't like the texture. Neither do you. You lay the pieces on a slab of oak. rubbed with sour butter and crushed dill. You're supposed to serve it cold. But it's so cold already. You wonder how anyone will eat it without turning to stone. Still, you plate it. You add onions, cracked rye, a drizzle of honey mead. Not for flavor, but to dull the senses. You carry it to the table. Your nose burns. They're gathered now. Warriors, women, children. The whole longhouse filled with voices, rising in anticipation. Tonight is a feast. Someone's named a child, or claimed new land, or returned from a raid with fewer fingers and more stories. You don't know the reason. You don't ask. They cheer as you place the fish before them. The scent spreads, thick and sharp, like a living thing. Eyes water. Mugs raise. They dig in. You wait. The first warrior takes a bite. Chews. Pauses. The room stills. Then, he swallows. Slaps the table. Strong, he bellows. Like it's a compliment. Others follow. Faces contort. Noses wrinkle. One man coughs into his cup. But no one stops. Because this is what feasting means. Enduring something awful together. Until it becomes a story. One woman bites into a slice. She closes her eyes. Smiles faintly. You suspect it's the mead. The children are less convinced. One pokes it with a stick. Another hides their piece under a fur. You pretend not to see. Meanwhile, you remain in the shadows. Refilling mugs. Collecting bones. Ignoring the headache building behind your eyes. From the stench that refuses to leave your skin. You think about the land across the water, where they use garlic and citrus, where meat is roasted over coals, instead of buried in the mud. You've heard of these places from passing traders, whose clothes smelled like cinnamon. You dream of them sometimes. But tonight, you are here, with your fermented shark, and your cracked fingernails, and the smell. Gods, the smell. Seeping into every pore. Like a curse you willingly accepted. Historians still argue whether dishes like this were signs of wealth, or just a sign that someone had run out of better ideas. You think? Maybe both. Eventually, the feast ends. The plate's empty. The air clears, just a little. Someone vomits behind the longhouse. You don't ask who. Instead, you begin to clean. You carry the oak slab to the stream. Scrub it with ash and pine needles. You don't even notice. You return. You sweep bones into a bucket. Gather mugs. Wipe spills. Someone claps you on the shoulder. Brave dish, they mutter. You nod. You don't reply. Because brave is a word for warriors. You just made the fish. You sit at last. Hilda curls beside you. Snout resting on your boot. You close your eyes. And dream. Of figs. It's the third morning in a row. Your left ear wakes up before you do. That soft pop. The shifting pressure. The dull ache from sleeping too close to the hearthstones. Where warmth never truly reaches. But smoke always does. You stretch slowly. Careful not to bump the ceiling beams, which hang low enough to kiss your skull. Whenever you stand too fast. The fire's gone out again. A circle of pale ash. One lonely coal. Glowing like a dying star. You breathe in. Big mistake. The mead barrel exploded during the night. You don't know how. But you find it. Split clean through. Foam trickling from its seams. the sharp tang of yeast and ruin thick in the air. It soaked the flour sack, ruined the dried herbs, and coated everything, including your shoes, in a sticky coat of half-fermented disaster. You crouch beside it, scoop some up. It smells potent, like honey and bad decisions. The foam bubbles in your palm. You wonder, would it still brew? You've never really understood mead. You know how it's made. Honey, water, wild yeast. A little thyme. Maybe juniper if someone's feeling fancy. But the yeast? That's the tricky part. You can't see it. Can't measure it. It's just either or not. And when it's not, things go wrong. Like now. You salvage what you can. Use a ladle to collect the mead into a clay jug. Filter out the splinters. Ignore the floating fly. You set it aside. Might be useful for soup. Might also blind someone. You don't have time to decide. Someone shouts for breakfast. And your hands still smell like yeast. You scrub them in the snow. Dig through the storage baskets. Find 3 wrinkled turnips. Half a leek. And a pouch of ground acorn meal. That may or may not have bugs in it. You sniff. You don't want to know. You boil water. Chop vegetables. Stir slowly. The steam curls upward, carrying with it the scent of earth and time and hunger. The warriors wander in. One limps. Another hums. A third carries a lump of raw dough. Asks you to make something of it. You nod. You don't ask why it's shaped like a rabbit. You don't want to know. You flatten it. Roll it. Fry it in goose fat. Left over from that feast 2 moons ago. It hisses. Sputters. Curls at the edges. They eat it without question. One says it tastes like bread if bread were angry. You choose to take it as praise. You serve the turnip stew. Thin, warm, quiet. They slurp. They burp. And then, from the corner of the room, a loud pop, followed by silence. And then, another. Your heart stutters. You look toward the jugs. The mead. It's fermenting. Fast. Too fast. The lids bulge. The clay hums. One cracks. Foam spills out in a quiet avalanche of sticky fizz. You leap forward. Cover it with a cloth. Try to hold it down. Too late. It erupts. A spray of golden froth. Across the floor. Your tunic. Someone's lap. They shout. Laugh. One man tries to taste it midair. It hits the ceiling. Someone claps. Someone else slips. The longhouse fills with yeasty laughter. And the smell of chaos. You just stand there, covered in foam, wishing you were someone else. Hilda appears. Of course she does. She licks the floor, then looks at you. Expectantly. You scoop some into a bowl. She drinks, then burps. You do not laugh. Because this is your life now. Exploding mead. Angry bread. And turnips that never soften. You spend the next hour scraping sticky foam from every surface. The floor. The ceiling. Your forehead. You wring out your apron. It's ruined. You tie it back on anyway. Later. As the others nap. Bellies full and noses pink from fermented air. You sit near the hearth. You take a small cup of the mead. It's sharp. Almost painful. But warm. You sip again. And you think, maybe this is what brewing is. Not science. Not skill. Historians still argue whether Viking brewers understood fermentation, or just stumbled into it again and again. You have no doubts. It's mostly stumbling. You stare into the fire. The mead bubbles quietly on the shelf, behaving. For now. Outside, snow begins to fall. Soft flakes, like whispers from the gods, telling you to sleep, if only for a moment. And so you do. Hilda beside you. The pot empty. Your hands warm. Just for now. They bring the turnips in a sack. Still wet with frost. Still heavy with dirt. Still suspiciously dented. Like someone dropped them off a cart. Or used them to bash in a Saxon shield. They smell like earth. Like mold. Like secrets buried too long. You roll one in your hand. And it stares back at you. With a dark spot that might be rot. Or just a bruise. From too much travel. And too little care. Cook these, someone says. And hands you a knife. With a blade that curves the wrong way. You nod. Because you always do. And that's when the other man speaks. A little too loudly. A little too amused. Best let the cook try yem first. Never know if the Saxons poisoned him. The room laughs. But you don't. You hold the turnip. Hold the blade. And feel the weight of the joke settle in your belly. Like a cold stone. Because it's not just a joke. They mean it. They always mean it. You are the first mouth. The taste tester. The sacrificial tongue. You're not a warrior. You're not a chieftain. You're the one who swallows first. To make sure no one dies. And if someone does? Well, it'll be you. Not the man who stole the turnips. From a foreign farmstead. Not the boy who laughed. You. So. You take the knife. You peel the skin. You cut off the worst spots. The dark ones. The ones that look like they've already started muttering curses. You throw them into the pot. Boil them hard. Add salt. Yes, someone finally traded for a small bag. You guard it with your life. You crush in dried garlic. A bit of vinegar. A sprig of something green that might be parsley. Or might be moss. And then, you take the first taste. The turnip is soft. A little bitter. A little sharp. Not poisoned. Probably. Your stomach turns anyway. Because every bite tastes like risk now. Like the edge of something thin and waiting. Historians still debate whether Viking raids brought new food or new fears. You serve the stew. Thick with root and doubt. They eat. One man chews slowly. Stares into the bowl. Like he's expecting something to rise out of it. And scream. Another adds mead. Shrugs. Eats again. You wait. Watch. Listen. No choking. No sudden death. Just chewing. Grunting. A burp. And then, a slow clap. One of the warriors smirks. Didn't die, he says. Good meal. You don't know whether to laugh. Or sigh. Or cry into the pot. So you just nod. And turn back to the fire. The pot is nearly empty already. You scrape the last bits. Set them aside for the dogs. Or maybe for Hilda. She appears. As if summoned. And sits beside you. You offer her a spoonful. She eats. Grunts. You choose to believe it means well done. The wind outside howls. Snow lashes the doorway. You place the lid back on the salt pouch. Like it's a treasure chest. The boy with the crooked tooth hands you a bundle. It's warm. Wrapped in fur. You open it. Cheese. Real cheese. Soft, pale, with a rind that smells only slightly wrong. You blink. He shrugs. Found it, he says. You wonder? Where? When? How old? You don't ask. You slice it thin. Melt it into the stew pot's warmth. Just a bit. For flavor. It smells strange, but not worse than yesterday's fermented fish. You take a bite. Creamy. Mild. Almost comforting. You serve what's left. Carefully. Quietly. One man chews. Then stands. Then laughs. See, he says. They try to poison us, and he turns it into soup. The room chuckles. You lower your gaze. Because even praise sounds like warning here. Later, when the longhouse sleeps. You sit by the fire. The pot is empty again. The salt safe. The cheese gone. Your fingers smell like garlic and smoke. Your lips taste of vinegar and fear. And still, you would eat it again. Because that's what you do. You taste the danger. So they don't have to. You're the cook. The tester. The sun never fully rises. It just hangs there. A pale smear behind the clouds. Watching. Waiting. You're chopping herbs in the dark now. Not because it's night, but because the storm's rolled in. And the smoke hole is clogged with snow. Or soot. Or maybe the gods just hate you today. You sit on a stool that leans to the left. Your back curves forward. Your eyes squint through firelight that flickers. More than it glows. The herbs are damp. Everything is damp. The moss, the furs, your knees. Even the air feels soggy. Like you're breathing through boiled wool. You unbundle your foraging sack. Spread the herbs across your lap. Nettle. Wild onion. Yarrow, maybe. The colors are dull in the dark. Everything muted by the shadows. And the soot that clings to the walls. Like it owns the place. You pick up your flint knife. It's dull. Again. You rub it on a stone. Back and forth. Slowly. Listening to the rasping rhythm. Like a lullaby made of knives. Still not sharp. But sharp enough to slice herbs. You hope. The first cut feels like tugging. You push harder. A sudden snap. A sting. You flinch. You've clipped your finger. Again. The pain is mild. You're used to it. But the sting's followed by a buzz. You look up. Bees. Angry ones. Of course. You forgot about the mead scrap bucket near the door. They found it. And now. They found you. You wave them away. They don't care. One lands on your forehead. You stare at it. It stares back. You whisper, "Please don't." It doesn't listen. You flinch. It flies off. You go back to slicing. Historians still argue whether Viking cooks worked with beeswax regularly, or just learned to suffer through bee visits. With grim acceptance. You're starting to understand the second one. The herbs finally yield. You scrape them into a wooden bowl. They look edible. You hope. You mix them into the stew, which today is little more than boiled oats and water. But with herbs. It might be something close to soup. Maybe. The fire's low. You add bark. A few dried twigs. The flame rises. Smoke curls up. Slaps you gently in the face. Your eyes sting. You blink. You don't complain. Someone enters. Not stomping. Not shouting. Just stepping softly. A girl with wild hair. And a wooden bowl clutched like treasure. She says nothing. Holds out the bowl. Inside. A chunk of something dark. Sticky. Strangely sweet. Dry berries. Bound with fat and crushed oats. She made it. You can tell. You look at her. She waits. You taste it. It's chewy. Tangy. Awkward on the tongue. You nod. She smiles. And leaves. No words. Just that. It's the best thing you've tasted all week. You return to the stew. You add her berries. Just a few. Let the sweetness fold into the broth. Like memory. Melting into warmth. You ladle a sample. Taste it. It's better. Not good. But better. And that's enough. You serve it quietly. One bowl at a time. The warriors are half awake. Grumpy. Muttering. But they eat. They always eat. One man stops you. Holds his spoon like a club. What's this? He asks. You pause. Then say. Food. He squints. Eats. You move on. The children get smaller bowls. The elders, larger ones. The pig, yes, Hilda again, gets a bit with extra oats. She grunts happily. Licks the bowl. Knocks it over. You don't mind. Outside, wind claws at the longhouse walls. Snow thumps against the roof. Inside, the stew steams softly. The bowls clink. And in this dim corner of the world, you've made something warm. Something strange. Something slightly sweet. And no one spat it out. You sit down again. Wipe your hands on your apron. Not that it helps. You stare into the fire. It snaps. Sighs. Settles into a slow burn. You close your eyes. And in th. Maybe herbs matter. Maybe the girl's berries changed everything. Or maybe you're just tired. And hungry. And grateful to feel something other than smoke on your face. You stretch your legs. The stool creaks beneath you. Your eyes grow heavy. But you don't sleep. Not yet. You still have to scrub the pot. Again. You don't remember falling asleep. Only waking. To shouting. Boots. The rattle of spears against the wall. You open your eyes. And the sky outside the smoke hole is still dark. A heavy, velvet black. Streaked with the orange haze of firelight. And just the faintest whisper of frost. Your head pounds. Your back. It's forgotten how to be straight. You smell like ash and thyme. And something faintly sour. Like old milk inside a leather boot. Someone kicks the door. Not a knock. A command. You rise. Slowly. Your knees resist. Your shoulders ache. But there's no time. They're back. Not from a raid. But from a funeral. You can smell it on them. Sweat, smoke, damp furs. And the bitter tang of death burned into their clothes. A warrior stumbles in. Drunk already. His braid matted with sleet. His eyes rimmed red from drink or grief or both. He slams his hand on the table. Feast, he says. His voice is low. Final. Undeniable. You glance around. The hearth is cold. The pot is dry. You have nothing ready. Nothing. Just scraps. A few bones. Maybe a fistful of barley. You nod anyway. Because what choice do you have? You move on autopilot. Gather the odds and ends. The last curls of cured meat. A half loaf of hard bread. 3 onions, soft at the bottom. A jar of lard with something floating inside. You choose not to examine too closely. You light the fire. It resists. The wood is damp. Your flint is dull. You spark it again. And again. And again. The third strike catches. A flame dances. Tired, shy, but alive. You feed it. Like it's your only friend in the room. You add water to the pot. Salt. The bones. They clatter in with a hollow, ancient sound. Like forgotten footsteps echoing in a church. The warriors talk behind you. Laugh. Drink. Someone begins to sing. A deep, mournful tune. That lingers in the beams. And trembles in your ribcage. You stir slowly. You peel the onions. Chop them crooked. Toss them in. A warrior lurches toward you. He slaps your back, hard. Too hard. You cook good for dead days, he says. His breath is sour. His eyes are wet. You nod. Because words are hard when you haven't slept. And the smell of lard and grief fills your lungs. He leaves. You stir. The pot begins to bubble. Faintly. It smells of old meat and the last comfort on earth. You toss in the last of the dried berries. For sweetness. Or for memory. You don't know which. And then? The bread. You cube it. Toast it on a flat rock by the fire. Brush it with lard. Sprinkle with salt. You place the pieces around the edge of the stew bowl. Like a crown made of crumbs. You taste the stew. It's not good. But it's warm. And it fills the mouth. With something other than silence. You serve the first bowl to the oldest warrior. A man who hasn't spoken since the funeral pyre lit the sky. He takes it. Nods. Eats. Says nothing. But he eats every drop. And wipes the bowl with the bread. And lays the spoon down gently. Others follow. They don't cheer. They don't joke. They just eat. Quietly. Slowly. Like it matters. Like it means something. You keep ladling. The pot empties. The fire dims. Someone passes you a cup of mead. You take a sip. It tastes like ashes and honey. The singing starts again. Soft. Low. Not from celebration. But from sorrow so deep. It needed a sound to carry it. You sit on the floor. The clay is cold. But your hands are warm from the pot. Hilda is asleep by the wall. Even she looks tired. You lean your head against the wood. Close your eyes. You hear one warrior whisper, "Best stew in weeks." You don't smile. Not really. But your heart softens. Just a little. Because tonight, you fed the grieving. And they ate in silence. And for once, they left you in peace. It starts with a whisper. Barely audible. Over the creak of the rafters. And the soft drip, drip, drip of snowmelt sneaking in through the thatch. A woman's voice. Low. Sharp. Wrapped in the smell of crushed herbs. And something smoky. Not quite incense. Not quite meat. You don't look up at first. You're scrubbing a pot. The big one. Your hands deep in lukewarm water. That smells like yesterday's sorrow. And this morning's ash. But she steps closer. Boots soft. Cloth dragging. A clinking pouch tied to her belt. You glance up. And there she is. The witch woman. Or so they say. No one calls her that to her face. They just nod. And move out of the way. When her shadow slides across the floor. She doesn't eat with the others. She doesn't speak unless spoken to. She sleeps by the burial stones. And she's looking directly at you. You blink. She points at the pot. You stirred it wrong, she says. Flat. Certain. You pause. Your hand still in the water. Your mouth partway open. I stirred, you answer. She nods. Widdershins, she says. You stirred it widdershins. You freeze. You don't even know what that means. But it sounds like a sin. She opens her pouch. Takes out a clump of something. Hair? Roots? A dried frog? She tosses it into the empty cauldron. It makes no sound. But the smell changes. Sharper now. Like mold and wet stone. She looks at you again. You have to fix it, she says. Then turns. And leaves. You're left with your hands in dirty water. A cursed pot. And no idea what just happened. You finish scrubbing. Dry the pot. Try not to think about the dried frog. But the next day, the trouble begins. Stomach cramps. 3 warriors, doubled over. One of the children, pale and shivering. Even Hilda. She won't eat. Just lies there. Nose tucked under her belly. Like she knows something you don't. And everyone is looking at you. Not accusing. No. Too much nettle. Not enough salt. But beneath it, you hear something darker. The cook stirred it wrong. She told him. He didn't listen. You didn't know. You swear. You would have stirred it backward. Forward. Sideways. If you'd known. But now, they think it's you. That you invited it in. The sickness. The shadow. Even though it's just stew. Just food. Isn't it? You try to make a new batch. Boil it hotter. Add garlic. Burn sage by the hearth. Even though you don't know why. You crush dried berries. Sing under your breath. You stir clockwise. Then counterclockwise. Then clockwise again. Just in case. But still. Someone falls ill. A woman this time. Sweats through the night. Mumbles in her sleep. And in the morning. They don't blame the gods. They don't blame the weather. They look at the pot. And then at you. You sit alone that night. The hearth long cold. Your hands in your lap. You think about every meal. Every herb. Every spoonful. You think about the witch woman's eyes. And the way she never smiles. And the way she said, "Fix it." You wake early. Go to the stream. Break the ice. Drag the pot out into the snow. You scrub it with ash. With straw. With melted snow. And a sprig of something bitter smelling. You took from her pouch. While she wasn't looking. You whisper. Nothing in particular. Just sound. A tone. A rhythm. A hope. You dry the pot. Set it down. You light a new fire. Soft. Slow. You boil water. Add nothing. Just let it simmer. Let it hiss. Let the steam rise and carry. Whatever it needs to carry. Into the beams above. The illness fades. The whispers quiet. Hilda eats again. The boy with the crooked tooth laughs. The warriors stop watching you. With that sideways look. And one evening. You find a pouch at your feet. You open it. Inside. Salt. Dried thyme. A stone carved with 3 dots in a circle. You look around. But you nod. To the air. to the stone, to the pot. And that night, you stir carefully, widdershins. Then not. Just to be sure. It begins with the silence. The kind of silence that presses against the door, like it wants to come in and sit beside you. No boots. No voices. No clatter of mugs or knives or laughter echoing from the yard. Just wind, low and slow, curling through the longhouse seams, like it's searching for something to carry away. You know this silence. You hate this silence, because it always comes right before something big. And then a knock. Not rushed, not frantic, just slow, heavy. You open the door, with a hand still covered in oat dust, still sticky from the morning's boiled roots. And you see them. 3 men. One of them holding a rope. On the other end of the rope, a horse. Dead. Very dead. And very large. The warrior at the front squints at you. "Make it good," he says. Then they leave it there. Just the body. In the snow. Steam curling from the place where its breath used to be. You stand still. The wind presses the door shut behind you, like a punctuation mark. You stare at the horse. You've never cooked a horse before. You don't even know if you're supposed to. But you've heard the stories. When warriors swear oaths to Odin. When they boast loud enough to shake the gods. Sometimes someone dares them. Sometimes a horse dies. And someone has to cook it. Today, that someone is you. The body is enormous. Dark. Solid. You circle it once. Your boots crunching through a mix of sleet and hay. The snow has begun again. Slow, soft. Like the sky trying to hide the body it just gave you. You grab a knife. The dull one. Because it's the only one. You begin to slice. The hide is thick. Tough. It resists you like it wants to stay whole. Your hands cramp. Your breath fogs. Time slips sideways. You strip what you can. Hack off chunks. Toss. You drag it to the fire. Too heavy to carry. You start the flames again. Hotter this time. You feed it fat. Wood. Shavings from your own spoon. You set up a spit. Not big enough. But it will have to do. You bind the meat with old rope. You turn it. And turn it. And turn it. For hours. Until your arms ache. Your legs shake. The fire roars. The smell. It's thick. Sweet in a way that makes your stomach knot. Like cooking something that once knew your name. You baste it with broth. With a bit of mead. With garlic. With onion ash. You don't speak. You don't hum. Even Hilda stays away. You turn it. Again. And again. The sky fades from grey to black. Without ever really changing. At last. They come. Bootsteps in the snow. Grunts. Murmurs. Dozens of them. Faces lit by firelight. Eyes gleaming. You step back. Hands shaking. They sit. The meat crackles. The fat drips onto coals and hisses. Like warnings you've chosen to ignore. You slice it thick. Serve it hot. Juice running onto the trenchers. Like red wine. They eat. No one talks. Just teeth. And heat. And the occasional cough. Then, a boy asks, "Was it a good horse?" No one answers. Someone tears another piece. You serve. More slices. More silence. Then a song. Low. Old. A chant. Almost. You don't understand all the words. They're ancient. But you recognize the mood. This is not a feast. This is something else. A ritual. A sacrifice. And you? You have just cooked a god's dinner. Historians still argue whether horse was ever truly eaten in Viking feasts, or only during sacred rites. Some say it was taboo. Others, essential. Tonight, no one argues. They just eat. And you keep serving. Until the meat is gone. Until the fire is low. Until your hands are numb. And your eyes sting. From smoke and knowing too much. The last slice goes to the chieftain. He nods once. Chews slowly. Then lays the bone on the floor. And says nothing more. You clear the table. You wipe the trenchers. You take the pot back to the stream. And wash it in ice. That bites your knuckles open. When you return, the longhouse is quiet again. The fire still smolders. A few embers glow. Hilda snores softly in the corner. And the spit. That too long spit. Sticky with horse fat. Leans against the wall like a forgotten spear. You sit. Alone. With your back to the fire. You can still taste the smoke on your lips. Still feel the heat in your bones. And in your mind. The slow turning of that meat. Again. And again. And again. The cold has crept deeper. Not just through the walls. But into your clothes. Your boots. Your very bones. Even the pot feels colder now. Harder to lift. Slower to boil. You scrape its bottom with a carved wooden spoon. Listening to the hollow sound echo back at you. Like a drum played by ghosts. There's nothing left in the pantry. Nothing except a sack of limp carrots. 2 cracked eggs. And a whisper of flour so fine. It clings to your fingers like guilt. You're supposed to make something out of this. Not stew. Not porridge. Just something. They're expecting leftovers tonight. You don't know why they think there are leftovers. Nothing lasts here. Not bread. Not meat. Not even time. You crack the first egg into a wooden bowl. The yolk spread sideways. Flat and uncertain. Like even it gave up. The second one smells off. You throw it away. No one needs that kind of courage today. You beat the lone egg with a splash of water. And a pinch of flour. Enough to make a batter. Not enough to make it good. You slice the carrots thin. Layer them in a pan of coals. Watch them steam and hiss and curl inward. Like they want to vanish. You mix the batter. Dab it over the carrots. Wait. There's no sizz. You flip it with a stick. It bends. Not crisp. Not golden. Just soft. Like everything else in winter. You tear it into pieces. And serve it quietly. One plate at a time. No one complains. No one cheers. They eat it like they eat the wind. Accepting. Blank-eyed. With the weariness of people. Who survived too many seasons. On too little food. You gather the bowls. You wipe the crumbs. A boy looks up. Is there more? You shake your head. He nods. As if that's fair. And it is. In its own sad way. You take the pot back to the stream. Again. Your hands already numb. Before they touch the ice. You scrub. You rinse. You stare into the water. Longer than you mean to. The surface reflects your face. Only not quite. The eyes are yours. But the mouth, it's someone else's. Someone quieter. Someone who forgot what warm bread tastes like. Someone who doesn't dream anymore. You trudge back to the longhouse. The pot hangs empty on the hook. The fire flickers out. The air is still. You sit beside Hilda. Her warmth the only real comfort you've known today. You lean your head back and let your eyes fall shut. There's nothing left to clean. No one left to feed. And you're too tired to cry. But if you did, the tears would probably freeze on your cheeks before they hit the ground. Because this is how it ends, isn't it? Not with glory. Not with battle. Not with songs carved into stone. But with one last meal. A cracked egg. And the quiet scraping of a wooden spoon against an empty pot. And now, everything softens. The fire is out. The cauldron rests in the still dark kitchen. It's black and belly cool at last. Outside, the snow falls in slow spirals. Quiet. Steady. Like time has finally decided to stop counting. The warriors sleep. The boots are still. The laughter has faded. And you? You are more than just tired. You're a shadow. Curled in the corner beside the hearth. Tucked under a tattered blanket that smells faintly of smoke and rosemary. Your hands rest. Finally. On your lap. No ladles. No knives. No splinters. Your breath moves slow now. Easy. The longhouse creaks like a lullaby. The wind hums outside. A sleepy hush that presses against the walls, but never quite enters. You think about warm bread again. About cinnamon. About things that maybe never existed, but feel real in the dark. And in your final moments before sleep, you imagine a pot. Already clean. Already full. Already steaming with something soft. And golden. And good. You don't stir. You don't wake. You don't dream. Because you've earned this stillness. This silence. This empty. Warm. Ending.